Welcome back to another segment of Game Changers. Today we are in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We spent 2 previous days here reviewing the startup community and the angel investor community, listened to pitch sessions as well as a full conference yesterday of the emerging investor groups here and venture capital groups in Sao Paulo. It's a very innovative community, tremendous amount of growth. I'm delighted to have Humberto Matsuda here, who is the managing partner of Performio Investments. Welcome to the show, Humberto. It's been delightful to be here and meet you and your team. There are many moving parts of this entrepreneur growth and investor growth here in Brazil. I'll let you take a few minutes and give us an overview of that evolution.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. The Brazilian ecosystem has been evolving gradually for the past 10 years or so. In the last 5 years, we've been able to perceive a change, a shift in the way that entrepreneurs have been behaving, especially because they've gone to different markets, they started learning about different countries, and now we've been feeling as investors, as VCs here in Brazil, that the right time for helping companies to become global opportunities have finally arrived. Still a process, but we're working very hard on that and getting very excited about it.
Mm-hmm. So you've been an entrepreneur. You worked in many companies, many environments, and then you found this opportunity and you decided to form a fund.
Right.
And you work. It's an unusual approach, but you work extremely well with coaching and being a mentor to the entrepreneurs. You are a leader and involved in the angel community and its growth here, and you also have strong relationships with the venture capital community. Now that's a pretty big range of, and you're on the board of the Brazilian VC Association, correct?
Correct.
How do you balance these out, and what are the types of responsibilities you have in those roles?
The only reason I'm able to pull this off is because my main objective working for all those institutions is actually help the ecosystem to work better integrated. Mm-hmm. The integration process has been quite difficult in the last few years because entrepreneurs were focusing on the things that matter for entrepreneurs. The VCs were focusing on the things that matter for VCs, and etc. Mm-hmm. And so only for the last couple of years, mm-hmm. The Brazilian players in this ecosystem realized that either we start working together or we won't be able to create something that is actually meaningful and has the potential to impress and create bigger things.
I met a few venture capital investors over the past few days and spoke to them last night. And they gave me the impression there are approximately maybe 10 reasonably sized venture capital firms right here between Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. A few outside, but that is the major. And then they have traditionally worked together, shared deals and so on. But recently it's become a little more competitive, and they're not and their ideal investment size has gone up. So they are often filling out that Series A completely. They are the Series A. There are no other investors, and therefore there hasn't been there's been a decrease in the openness of sharing a deal with other VCs. However, in the angel community, this shareability and syndication effort is in full bloom or starting to move forward. Is that an appropriate assessment?
Yes. I would say that here in Brazil, even before when we didn't have that kind of competition, Brazilians tended to do everything by themselves. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I mentioned the integration of all those parts. Angels-wise, there's a significant shift in the way that networks have been behaving because of the examples of networks like Harvard Angels here and a few other networks that are quite successful, not only attracting good angels to invest with them, but also the kind of entrepreneurs they've been able to invest in and back. In the venture capital side, on the other hand, because of the increase of the competition, what we've been realizing is that even though there are more of us now, we are not that many. And therefore, it's getting harder to find the other VCs who have the same investment thesis or compatible investment thesis so you can co-invest in. Mm-hmm. So it's not about only about competition, but there's also, because they are better educated and they have the opportunity to do more, they need to be more selective regarding with whom you're co-investing so the investment goes in a much smoother way and all that.
Compatible partners, basically, right?
And there's also another factor that because we weren't that many for so long, everybody was used to lead investments, and not everybody was comfortable in following. But eventually, we'll come up with a different kind of mindset and be able to do more together.
That lead investor and co-investor that's more of an ego issue, I assume, bragging rights perhaps, because there's no financial benefit that I'm aware of, other than you can set the terms of the deal as the lead investor, set the term sheet, but follow-on investors participate in the same terms. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Okay.
But there's also the factor that because it's still an ecosystem that it's evolving, many LPs, they had the ego issue and they were pushing the GPs to lead investments. So it's not necessarily that the GPs had the ego issue. Sometimes it's the LPs pushing them to, oh, we're the best, we need to lead this one.
Now you have a VC fund basically here at Performio, correct?
Correct.
All right. About how many LPs do you have in that fund, approximately?
We have quite a few LPs. We have over 55 angel investors.
55?
Angel investors investing directly in our fund. We have the government. We have the Belgian government investing also. So in total would be around 70 LPs in both funds. We have two funds actually.
It's very good. And are there also any corporate investors, or that's still in the sideline?
No corporate investors, but we do have quite a few family offices, and we've been working closely to corporate VCs in the sense of having opportunity to co-invest with us. They haven't jumped in yet, but it's a matter of time.
I'm sure they will. On the government side, it's a little unusual. I mean, for North America, for a person like me from the U.S., that we see the government investing in the fund, a VC fund in particular. And but I've come to learn that this is a very positive evolution or development, because it puts the government on at the same table as investors and gives them a unique understanding of what the ecosystem is about. Do you engage directly with the government officials who are, shall we say, approving these investments?
Yes and no, because when there's public offering out there, the regulations prevent us from engaging those people. But every time we're discussing public policies and helping the government to understand what they could do more for the venture capital industry. So as a representative of the Brazilian Venture Capital Association, as a representative of the Angel Capital Association, we were able to talk to them and help them to understand better their role as sponsors of fostering the venture capital industry and the entrepreneurs in general. But there's also the factor that the government is still learning. So back a few years ago, they didn't have the same mindset. So there were a lot of issues, and there's a lot of people who still say bad things about the way the government behaved. But things are changing, and the government understands now that it's not about pushing and enforcing the way they feel like venture capital should be, but it's about learning from other LPs what venture capital is. So it's a good thing to see them evolving.
That's great. That's a great evolution. We don't have that I'm aware of. I mean, we have a few sovereign funds, country sovereign funds that will invest in venture funds. We'll have pension funds. But those are, by and large, separate from the actual government. We don't have the U.S. government investing in venture funds. They are doing other types of grants. But that's a very interesting, and I think it's unusual, but maybe other countries are doing it. Do you see other countries doing this, or is it unique?
There's quite a few initiatives in other countries. The Israeli government did that for a long time before allowing the private sector to take over. But as we speak, there's matching funds from the government in Argentina, in Colombia, in Chile. So there's a lot of efforts that governments are putting to engage and foster innovation, entrepreneurial movements, and also venture capital as a byproduct.
Let me touch on one additional topic, which is the change in the society, the way many of the people, both the mid-level executive class as well as the younger people coming out of school, have embraced entrepreneurship, embraced personal responsibility, and are creating change in the Brazilian society. This seems to be a last 5 years, a recent evolution in the last 5 years. Maybe you can comment on that?
Well, I guess that finally Brazilians understood that there's only two ways to generate wealth, right? Either exploiting natural resources, exploiting workers, or by innovating. And after so many years having so much to prove about Brazil, Brazil has been always being the country of the future. Great things expected out of Brazil from not only from Brazilians but also foreigners. Finally, we realized that either we're capable of being innovative or we're done. There's limits for exploiting natural resources, exploiting people to sell cheaper goods. So it's a natural process that either we learn how to cope with it or we be out of the game.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it evolved out of the society here watching other countries, notably the US and other countries, have successes and saying we should be able to do that? Because the world is flat. We all agree. Communications and the internet and access to technology is so easily. You have great universities here. You have very smart people here. And they said we can participate also. Or was there some other mandate in the government or maybe perhaps in the media that said it's time for Brazil to take its place in the world of innovation?
I would say a little bit of both. And on top of that, also the factor that there aren't that many opportunities besides being able to become an entrepreneur and innovate. There's still jobs available, but not as many as there used to be. And the government has been trying very hard to create different ways for the country to evolve and different opportunities for the youngers. So it's a combination of factors, and also because of the media and seeing young entrepreneurs from in the US, in Korea, in Israel becoming rich and famous, that also helps a lot. So,
in the 80s, everybody wanted to be a rock star. Now everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and it's a great evolution. Good for the world, good for the country. So, Humberto, I want to thank you very much. If people are interested in contacting you for interest in the fund and what's going on here in Brazil, any other contacts for you? Your email perhaps is?
Matsuda@performinvestimentos.com.
So I want to thank you for your time. You've been an outstanding host. I've very much enjoyed our trip here, and just been a great insight to the dynamics here in the Brazilian economy, the people, the resources they have. It's tremendous. I look forward to staying in touch and hearing about the new evolutions and new companies coming out of Brazil.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay.